Hey everybody, Tony D. Little Jones asleep on the couch, and it's time to wrap it up tonight with a Hollywoke hot take. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Please check out my books. Links in the description, including Wokeness novel Hollywoke, another novel about the stuff we talk about here, and of course the Pineys books 1 through 6, horror, comedy, South Jersey. It's all there. Support the channel if you can. Also, we have 2 videos on the other channels, Bitchute and Rumble, including my take on Elon Musk hosting Saturday Night Live, which you know I have strong opinions about that. But getting on the other entertainment news, rocker Mikhail Graves, cancel culture is a plague on our culture. Groupthink and identity politics are a danger to a free society. Yeah, I'm not surprised that the misfits feel this way. These guys are, they were out there back in the day. They know what it's about. They don't kowtow to anybody. Not these guys. No way. These guys were a staple at Dragon Con back in the day. I think they still kind of are, but I don't think they show up. But their fan base is definitely strong. Definitely strong. The anti-woke is strong with this one. But on the opposite end of the scale, unfortunately, actress Scarlett Johansson calls out Golden Globes org HFPA for sexist questions and remarks. Well, whatever. Who cares? Who really cares about the Golden Globes? Nobody cared about it when it was kind of popular. Ricky Gervais hosted it, and then it was kind of cool, but just another friggin' award ceremony. Go ahead, make it woke. Watch your ratings drop. Hollywood hiring rage coaches to take on abusive bosses. Oh yeah, that'll work. I wonder who's going to pay the rage coaches. Could it be the guys who have to hire them? The studio makes them hire them, or maybe the studio does it, and what? What are you going to do? That isn't going to work. It's stupid. These guys are just going to use probably the rage coaches to rubber stamp their behavior. Maybe they wind it back a little bit, but it's not like it's going to be law. The problem is Hollywood doesn't know how to reward people anymore for making good movies, and it's a very cutthroat business. There's probably too much money in it now, and what would actually help it would be to kind of defund it and go back to a situation in which people are making money, but they're not making insane money. Okay? They tried to set up these rules in these unions so everybody would be paid an equitable wage, but it hasn't worked. It almost never works. People game the system. And the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. That's the way it's always worked. I'm not saying we shouldn't try to do something about it, but I don't think unions are the answer, because the moment you set up the unions, you set up a hierarchy, which then people exploit. The way to do it would be, I don't know, after a certain amount of money, you're out of the union. You're just out. The union shouldn't be for the guys at the top. It just shouldn't. It should be for the guys who are professional, they're working. So maybe there has to be a cap. I don't know. But what I do know is probably this rage coaches for bosses isn't going to work. You could maybe lower the temperature somehow. I mean, these studios just waste too much money. I think part of the problem is they're too centralized. Centralization really is the enemy. Even in private industry, too much centralization. I think Disney on its own should break itself up. It really should. They would be better if the companies were smaller and more independent. Yeah, they can work together, but when they're all the same company, some things work better. There's more money, but there's also more waste, and there's also more behavior that falls through the cracks, I think. Disney creative director defends Snow White ride after woke, non-consensual kiss outrage. Here's a perfect example, right? Why doesn't Disney defend the ride? Why doesn't corporate say, you know, we love the ride and we're never getting rid of it, or something to that effect? Now, it's likely they gave the green light to this creative director, I guess, to say something, but maybe not. Maybe they just sort of let it happen, sort of gauge the reaction. If this person gets canceled, maybe they'll dump them, and if they don't, they'll go, oh yeah, we agree with that. I think the smart move probably would have been to ignore this stuff, but now that you're not ignoring this stuff, now you have to answer it. At least until the point where you finally establish a line between you and the fans. You can't listen to the fans in terms of obeying them. You can hear their complaints and maybe take them in and think about them, but you shouldn't obey them. Fans will always dare you to destroy your own creation because that's what they come up with. And that's not what's best for your creatives. It may be, momentarily give the fans a thrill. It's like, I always go back to the vote to kill Robin, right? DC Comics had a vote. Should we kill Robin or should we let him live? It was a dumb move. Because they were going to vote to kill Robin, just to see if DC Comics would do it. And not only does it give away the story, but now you've kind of put creative decisions in the hands of the fans, and you've crossed the line that you can't uncross. And of course, they did sort of uncross it, but that's another story. Nobody ever dies in comics. Actress Sherry Cola, never heard of her, sees a connection between Hollywood's lack of Asian representation and hate crimes against Asian Americans. Really? Did you work that out scientifically? Okay. I don't think that's true at all. Part of it is just the media's focus on it currently. I don't know what the actual stats are. I think they are up, but I think they're up as a result of the focus. So it's a little bit like a self-fulfilling prophecy in some ways, but it doesn't help that the media lies about the majority of the perpetrators. That's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. So, this also seems like, hey, let's get in on the hustle. Let's get in on the race hustle. Because we're Asian and we could now force them to put Asian people in things that, that could have been cast by anybody, but now we're going to force it to be Asian people too. You're going to get to the point where you have these racial quotas, and it's going to be like, well, we have a crowd scene. Well, 13% have to be this, and 5% have to be this, and guess what? The majority of the country is white, and you're going to have, you're either going to have over-representation, which doesn't work, or you're going to drive yourself silly trying to, present, a crowd of people. It depends on what part of the country you're in. If you're on the West Coast, probably more Asian people will be in the crowd, simply because more Asians emigrated to the West Coast of the United States because it's closer to Asia. Although I think the biggest population of Chinese immigrants is in New York. But, the East Coast, we've got more Italians. In Louisiana, you got probably more French or French descendants. It depends on what part of the country you're in. It's a big country. And this sort of racial quota nonsense has never worked, ever. We thought we got past it, but the woke tards decided to bring it back. Here's a guy who is not a woke tard at all, who is been speaking out quite vociferously. And I gotta say, I wasn't a huge fan of Rob Schneider back in the day, but I've become such a fan of him now because he's really spoken out. So Rob Schneider calls out corporate media free speech under attack by people whose jobs are to defend it. And I've heard stuff behind the scenes about Rob that really made me respect him and like him a lot. I think I told this story of what he did for Adam Sandler's birthday, which is gross. I won't go into again, but he's really kind of a cool guy. So you never know, just because he was the copy guy on Saturday Night Live in kind of an annoying sketch. A lot of people on SNL, they really didn't get to do their comedy, in my view. Chris Rock, to me, is a perfect example. I never thought he was funny until he got off of Saturday Night Live, and then he did a stand-up, and it was like, wow, this is amazing. Seth Rogen, speaking of woke, says he does not plan to work with James Franco after sexual misconduct allegations. Well, yeah, he painted himself into a woke corner on Twitter, so I'm not surprised by this at all. But it's really a shame, because I felt those guys worked together very well, and they were kind of a duo. And now, I think Seth has gone off the woke end. He really has. But all right, whatever, dude. Good. I'll go see Franco's movie. I'll ignore yours. Elon Musk's ratings bring lift to Saturday Night Live. Called it. Yeah, of course. I mean, the show's been in the doldrums forever. Maybe the Trump stuff was okay, I guess, for the ratings, but this is something they could have built upon if they embraced it, but they didn't. So they're going right back into the toilet, I think, with the next show. And here's another one. Critics' Notebook on Elon Musk. Debut is more forgettable than controversial. This is the Hollywood Reporter trying to throw some shade over it. And I think there was another article about how Doge plunged. Whatever. Check out my other video for more of a take. Gal Gadot says Joss Whedon threatened my career during Justice League reshoot. The evidence is piling up on Whedon. Seems like he's kind of an a-hole. I mean, I wasn't there, so maybe he's not. Maybe these people are all just piling on because it's okay to do so, and they're trying to blame him for stuff that, they're scapegoating him for Hollywood's woes, but it doesn't sound that way now. It sounds like he's kind of an a-hole on the set, but who knows? Who knows? But I'm a little surprised that Gal Gadot, it was the first time I've ever heard her say anything like that. She seemed like more of I'm not going to paint myself the victim kind of narrative. So I feel like she has a lot of credibility in this area since she's not constantly whinging on the internet. So, it does not look good for Whedon. But I think he's kind of on his way out anyway. I think they're done with him, especially after all these accusations. I mean, this is a guy that I think is done. Despite the money he's made Hollywood, it's going to be he'll be in the weeds for the next 10 to 20 years. And finally, this is why Hollywood, you need to jettison the woke. Chinese films again lead after record May Day frame. Wrath of Man, Humes, I don't know what that means, 18 million in early offshore release, hits Middle Kingdom on Monday international box office. So the Chinese are beating us in the movies. Congratulations, Hollywood. You finally went woke and went broke. Not totally broke, but you're losing in the movie front. You idiots. This is exactly the plan of the Chinese. They'd love to take over the movie industry. Oh, that would be sweet, sweet for the Chinese. Take it over. Make the money. Now, I don't think they can because the Chinese can't make certain movies. By the way, they just recently banned feminism. So imagine their movies are going to be pretty based. But that all being said, Wrath of Man looks pretty good. I'd be psyched to see Wrath of Man. But the Chinese movies, not so much. The Communist Party controls everything in China. So Hollywood, you need to cut yourself loose. It's the only way. They're going to grind you into the dust, if not buy you outright and own you. It's the only way. If you don't cut yourself loose now, this is just going to continue. They'll take over distribution. They'll just buy it all. You won't have control of anything anymore. Then what are you going to do? then you'll be even more beholden to the Chinese. Then you'll have to edit your movies. It won't be a choice anymore. You did it for money previously, but then you won't be able to get distribution without doing the edits, and then you won't even get any extra money for doing it. You'll just be sort of treading water and be beholden to the Chinese. And then when they decide they want to start winning Oscars, guess what? Then you're really screwed. So you got to get out of the business of making movies for China. You're taking bad PR hits anyway. Tell them to go pound sand, because if you do it now, the Chinese will eventually come back to you and say, well, we'll distribute some of your movies. Tell them you're not going to edit anything, because you're an American company and you're not allowed to. You know, you can use your influence, Hollywood, to say to the government, please make a rule so we can go back to the Chinese and say we're no longer allowed to edit it for the Chinese. I mean, you could do that. You know, tell them to make a rule to force you to obey the Constitution and freedom of speech, and then you could just say to the Chinese, well, it's out of our hands. There's nothing we could do. And then that way, the Chinese will be, you know, it'll be their decision. And when they decide not to run a movie and it gets pirated anyway into the culture there, they'll be the ones losing out on the money. The theaters will. They'll have their own movies, but they won't have anything else. Or you can continue to be beholden to them until finally they own you, because that's the plan. In case you were wondering, that's the plan, Hollywood. So get with it, or get woke and go broke.